Prepare yourself to be blown away by the seismic sounds and scrutiny of AFTERSHOCKS Podcast with Chris Aiken and Matt Hartnett.
Awesome, thanks. All right, well, here we go. AFTERSHOCKS episode number 10, and today my guest is a legend in the world of classic heavy metal. He's the vocalist of German's power metal pioneers DIGGER, who are celebrating their 40th anniversary as a band, man. Wow, 40 years, and they're getting ready to release their 20th album called Fields of Blood, which is scheduled for a May 29th release on Napalm Records. And, of course, I'm talking about Mr. Chris Boltendahl. First off, thanks for coming on the podcast, Chris. How you doing?
Hello, I'm fine, my friend. Thank you so much. The band is healthy and still alive.
Great. Well, that's the most important thing, right? Awesome, man. And, I was just mentioning 40 years, and more importantly, Fields of Blood is album number 20. And to me, that's the more important number than 40 years existence, because you can find a bunch of bands out there that, not a bunch, but a handful that can claim a long-term existence, yet they put out an album and they tour maybe once or twice a decade, whereas DIGGER, you guys have been going full force throughout 4 decades, and especially since the early 90s, really on a very consistent basis. So I just wanted to say congratulations, on adding 2 more milestones to the phenomenal DIGGER legacy, man. It's got to really, feel really good for you, huh?
Yes, thank you so much. I never thought that we do it 40 years when I started with the band in 1980, and we did the first records in 1984 with Heavy Metal Breakdown. But now 40 years later, I think we are still alive. We are really creative. We love our music, and we love to do music for the fans. I think that is a thing which keeps us alive and makes everything, sensible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And speaking of that, the new album Fields of Blood, that's a record that I cannot recommend highly enough to our listeners. It's to me, an overall very well balanced release in terms of different styles and song structures. And, one of the songs that really shines and is a bit of a change for the band is the phenomenal duet you do with Nora from Battle Beast called 1,000 Tears. Tell us a little bit more about how that came to be, how you hooked up with Nora.
At first, we had in mind for this ballad Alicia from Arch Enemy, but she was overworked and she didn't have the time. Mm-hmm. So we remember that we played with this, great band, Battle Beast, a couple of festivals together 2 years ago. And then I remember the song Black Ninja from Battle Beast, and I said, hey, that would be cool to get Nora as Queen Mary on this song. Mm-hmm. And we called her, and she agreed. And yes, and we recorded last November in Axel's studio and mixed it in February. And yeah, it's great. We also invited her for this year's Wacken Open Air for the 40th anniversary show for the band. But unfortunately, that won't happen.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure you had a bunch of things planned for this year, huh, for the 40th anniversary?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. We had planned a lot of good shows with many bagpipers on stage. For Wacken Pro, we planned a show with 75 people on stage,
Wow.
And now we have to do it next year. Then we celebrate the 40th and 1 year anniversary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that'd be, well, I hope you do. I hope by then everything's kind of back to semi-normalcy, at least, where you can definitely do that. Fields of Blood, obviously, too, it marks the band's 3rd record with, lyrical themes and concepts that are based on the Scottish Highlands. And, in fact, I did read that parts of the new record were even recorded there. When you sit down and you plan the writing process for a future record, how do you go about selecting, what concept you want to write about it? As I'm sure you have more than one concept, obviously, in mind when you're starting, to think about a new album. So how does that selection process work for you?
Normally it came when more or less shortly before the release of the original record, the actual record, or after, 1 month after. And for example, the idea for doing this Scotland thing again was 2 years ago, I was on vacation in Scotland and showed my son, who was 12 years old at this time, all these famous battlefields and the famous castles. And I told him the story of Tunes of War and everything. And then I felt by myself that the story is not at the end. And I called Axel from the holiday and said, "Hey, Axel, I think we have to do another record about Scotland." And that was the time the Living Dead album wasn't released. It only wasn't released 1 month later. So now we have more or less in 2 weeks a release of the new one, Fields of Blood. And Axel and I, we already talking about the next one.
Oh, wow, really?
Yes. And we fixed the idea, and I contacted the cover artist and said, "Hey, we have to do another cover." And he said, "Hey, your release is in 2 weeks. Is something wrong?" No, for the next one. You know? Everybody's going crazy about that we are so creative. But at the end, it's a gift, you know, to have this kind of creativity in your head or in your body. And we can't stop writing songs. And I think as soon as they sound like Fields of Blood or You by Metal, then it's good to release them. And not waiting 5 years, you know.
Yeah, no, exactly. And yeah, you guys have been doing that, like I said, now for the better parts of almost 3 decades. You know, the one thing that really sticks out to me about, you know, the new record is that it has that sort of like old school whole album listening feel to it, where in order to really experience and connect to the music and the concept, I think it's very vital that one sits down, they listen to it in its entirety. And, you know, in these days, obviously most new releases that come out, you know, from bands are focused really on obviously streaming, and they're really based on, you know, more like releasing a couple of songs, maybe a couple of catchy songs that might attract attention to listeners. But, you know, and we hear all the time these days that bands, you know, release records in order to tour, unlike how it used to be where you would tour to support the record. So I guess my question is, you know, for a serious, seasoned and successful, you know, veteran band and a musician like yourself, how do you grapple and sort of wrestle with the modern way of doing business in the industry, you know, while at the same time, you know, you got to keep the band's integrity and your legacy intact by, you know, continuing to churn out these great album experiences like Fields of Blood?
You know, I'm now 50 years old, and I grew up with all this 70s band. And when I was a kid and I read in a newspaper or in a music magazine that an album will be released in 4 or 5 weeks, I waiting the day of the release in front of the record store and going in and listen to it. Yeah, like a, you know, with a fire. With a fire in my head, like a new Inhale or a new Black Sabbath, and then carry it at home like a treasure, you know, and start listening again at home. Nowadays, everything is so fast, and you have to do 3 songs up front. You have to start with a promotion 3 months, and sometimes I wish back the old days where everything was not so complicated like these days to reach everybody. Look, if you play a live show and you make a mistake, it's 1 minute later, everybody in the world can see it.
True, yeah.
You know, and I think with all this streaming stuff on video or audio, with Spotify and YouTube, music lost a lot of culture, you know.
Sure.
Listen to music is like an adventure. And every time when I listen to a new album, I had some pictures in my head, you know. And nowadays, you can listen at Spotify, and you don't like the first chorus, boop, you can cut it. But nobody the young people don't have the time or the patience to listen to a record more than one time, or listen to it 3, 4, 5 times like we did it in the past, you know. And then from time to time we found When I remember, I heard the third album from Van Halen. I was totally pissed. What is this? What they are doing there? What a shit! And then, it was then the Cradle Will Rock and Women and Children First. And then I listened to it at home 2, 3, 5, 6, 8 times, and then wow, that is my music. They never changed their style. They did it in another way, And I think not a lot of bands have this chance today to go this way, And I think Gravedigger has a trademark. And if you listen to 1,000 bands, you can say, "Oh, band is Gravedigger," and that we are proud of.
You did release a statement this morning. I saw that said you will release an album a year until the pandemic is over, until you can return to live touring. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, because in Germany they start doing concerts in car cinemas.
Oh, okay.
The drive-in cinemas.
Oh wow. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't want to play in front of 500 cars.
Sure. Yeah.
That is stupid. Without a PA, streaming directly from the stage into the car on the car radio, or doing the streaming concerts, knowing that people are sitting in front of their computer screens or televisions, or in their beds lying there and looking Gravedigger in an empty hall. That is, or social distancing, I think that has nothing to do with heavy metal.
I agree.
Heavy metal is fire. Heavy metal is energy. You have to see the people, the faces of the people, smelling the sweat and everything. That is heavy metal.
Sure. And
until the day we can't do that in a show and can see that in a show with the fans together, we don't want to play shows. And instead of that, we release a record every year.
Yeah.
So we have the time,
Yeah, I think it's a great idea if you do that. I mean, obviously the fans will all love that. So, but of course we'd rather see you playing live, obviously, than putting out a whole bunch of albums every year. It's a good balance you need.
For sure.
So just one last question. I mean, so now that things are starting to kind of wrap up a little bit, what's the one thing or piece of advice that you would give to your younger self today if you can go back, 40 years ago? Or would you change anything? Or you would just let things be the way they were and the way they obviously occurred?
I made a lot of experiences in my career, It was good experience, bad experience, but at the end it make it to the guy I am today. And I'm a happy guy, and I don't want to miss any minute. Also from the good and the bad experiences. So my advice to the people, to younger bands, is go your own way, like Peter Frampton said, and find your identity, believe in yourself, and carry on your kind of music that you want to play. Don't play music that other people played before, and find your identity. That is the most important thing to have success, and believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And stay healthy.
Yes, always, right? Stay healthy. That's number one, right? Well, Chris, man, thank you so much, for coming on and talking with me. And for the listeners out there, check out the new Gravedigger album called Fields of Blood, out May 29th on Napalm. And just following tradition on the show, Chris, go ahead and pick a song off the new record, and we'll end the show with it so the fans can listen to it.
I love Lions of the Sea.
Lions of the Sea. All right. You got it. Lions of the Sea. Here it is. Thanks for listening to Aftershocks. Thanks for listening to Aftershocks. For more episodes, go to our website at www.aftershockspodcast.com. Visit us on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more news and information on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe, listen to, and review all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms. For your music listening pleasure, visit our website or go to www.shockwavesradio.com. For all comments and questions, please email us at info@aftershockspodcast.com.